HTML stands for Hypertext Markup Language and is a standard language for formatting web documents. It was created from the SGML, or Standard Generalized Markup Language, used at CERN, the European Organization for Nuclear Research. Numerous individuals contributed to its development, but specifically Tim Berners-Lee accumulated and published the first collection of HTML elements in a document called HTML Tags in 1991. It was later officially adopted by the Internet Engineering Task Force, or IETF, in 1993, and in 1995 they ratified HTML 2.0, the first Internet document standard. HTML 2.0 has continued since as a standard against which all future versions of HTML, such as HTML 5.0, have been based. HTML is often dynamically written with PHP or active server pages. The language consists of elements that are designated by opening and closing tags and angle brackets, the greater than and less than symbols. In addition to HTML being embedded in PHP or ASP code, it will itself embed other languages within HTML documents, like JavaScript and cascading style sheets, or CSS files. A note for beginning PHP, Perl, or active server page programmers. While HTML is used on its own by millions for building web pages every day, it is a fundamental necessity that PHP, Perl, and active server page programmers have a foundation in HTML before getting into the PHP, Perl, or ASP languages themselves. Why? You will be constantly switching back and forth between these languages in HTML, as you use them to dynamically create and write HTML into your projects as your server responds to each client request. Graphics formats. Before we go over HTML basics, let's examine three graphics formats commonly used in HTML documents and accentuate the differences between them: JPEG, GIF, and PNG. First, let's take a look at JPEG files. JPEG, or Joint Photographics Expert Group, or JPG files, support a 24-bit color palette and use a lossy compression technique. This means that the quality decreases the more you compress it. JPEGs do not support transparent backgrounds. However, they can display many more colors at greater bit depth than other image formats, and they can do this using very efficient compression techniques. JPEG image files do not support being linked together into animated sequences like GIF image files do. Second are GIF files. GIF, or Graphics Interchange Format files, use a lossless compression technique that implements a CLUT, or color lookup table, to remap an image's original colors into a 256 color palette. GIFs support transparent backgrounds and linking multiple images together into a single GIF, thus providing animation capability in the form of animated GIF files. The downside of using GIF images is that they do not support high bit depth color and do not compress as efficiently as JPEG images. Third are PNG files, or portable network graphics. PNG images support transparent backgrounds like GIF images. Unlike GIFs, they provide alpha channel support, gamma correction, improved compression, and improved interlacing. PNG images cannot be linked together into animated sequences like GIFs. Since PNG files use alpha channels instead of a CLUT, the transparent color is stored as a 4-bit RGBA value instead of a 3-bit RGB value. This means that where edges of a GIF image may appear jagged on a transparent background, the edges of a PNG image will not. For this reason, PNG image files are used frequently on the internet. There are many scripting languages that can be embedded in and are often used with HTML. We will cover these in more detail in other videos, but here is a brief summary of the most common ones. They are JavaScript, cascading style sheets, and SQL. We will go into more detail about these later. Here are some basic tags needed in every HTML document. First and foremost, the open and closing HTML tags. These denote that all in between the open and closing tags is HTML. Then there's the open and closing head tags, which is where the title, JavaScript, and CSS or cascading style sheet code often go. Then there are open and closing title tags, and this contains the title of the page. It's not displayed on the page, but in the browser's tab or status bar. And finally, the body tags, and within the open and closing body tags is the visible part of the page that actually displays in the web browser. HTML tags often have attributes or properties that are displayed within the tag, and these set different properties and values for the HTML document. For example, in the body tag you have BG color and text. BG color sets the background color and text sets the text color. You can also specify a background with the attribute key name background, and then a GIF or JPEG file. You can specify the link and the visited link colors with link and vlink, and you can load JavaScript functions and applications with the onload method placed inside the body tag. In addition, there's left margin, top margin, margin height, margin width, all of these to set the margin properties on a web page. Here I'm just using NetBeans, which is a free source code editor, does Java, C++, PHP, and HTML. And you can see my HTML tags, and I'll actually do some highlighting so you can kind of see the open and closing tags. So notice that with HTML, everything that I want to display on the page is sandwiched between the opening and closing HTML tag. Notice with the head tags that my title tags are sandwiched between them. And this title would not appear on the page itself, but on the tab or the status bar, depending on the web browser being used. The text and items that actually appear on the page for the user to see in their web browser appear between open and closing body tags. So I want to put all that text here, and then here's, in this case, a line or carriage return, which we'll talk about in a moment, and you would actually see this on the page, and then you would actually see this on the page because it's in the body tags. You just want to be careful for every opening tag in HTML that you also have a corresponding closing HTML tag if it requires it. Otherwise, things won't display properly. To see what this page looks like, I'm just going to right click and select View, and then we'll look at it in Firefox. And so it's just a simple white background, and in this case a basic HTML tag is what it says. Link hurry, they captured Princess Zelda. Here's some basic HTML tags, and this time I included two attributes in the body tag. To set the background color to black, I use BG color equals black, and I set the text to white with text. And here's what that would look like. Here's the HTML embed tag. The embed tag can be used to add sound and video media in the form of MP3, WAV, MIDI, MP4, AVI, and MPEG files to an HTML document. Here are three examples. In the first example, we're loading an MP3. We're going to play it automatically with the attribute AutoStart, and we're setting the width to 5 and the height to 2. In the next example, we're going to play an MP4 video, and again, the attribute AutoStart is set to true, so it will start automatically. And the third one, the source attribute is set to Skyward Sword AVI, so it will load and play that video automatically because again, AutoStart is set to true. Here's an example of using the embed tag to play an MP3 file from a subdirectory called Media Sounds, and the name of the file, Lincoln Zelda Skyward Sword MP3. It'll start playing as soon as the page loads since AutoStart is set to true. And here we have the hidden attribute set to true. So this will hide the control from the page that would allow you to start or stop the sound file. Now this would work with Internet Explorer, which can play embedded files with the hidden attribute set to true, but it would not work with Firefox. Firefox has to be able to display something in order to be able to play it in a web page. And so to show you what I'm talking about, if I preview this with Firefox, you'll notice it displays the text and everything, and the HTML source is still there, but it doesn't play anything. Now on the other hand, if I open the very same web page in Internet Explorer, it will play the embedded file, even though the hidden attribute is set to true. So a workaround for this is you can basically make the, here since I'm loading locally, I need to click on Allow Block Content to allow Media Player to play there. Or excuse me, QuickTime. Anyway, now you can hear it. Even though you can't see it, you can hear it. Okay, so that's one way of using the embed tag. Now, in order to use the embed tag so that it will work with Firefox, we need to make it visible. So in this case, we're not going to set the hidden attribute. We're going to actually give it width and height. I'm going to play the same file, and this time, if I load it up in Firefox, and you can see here's the control over here where you can control the sound, pause it, play it. Alright, so notice the attributes I'm including in the embed tag here, the source, which is the directory and name of the MP3 file, the width, the height, auto start being set to true, the alignment, which is I'm pushing it to the right, and repeat, which means it'll just keep repeating. Okay. Here is another example of using the embed tag. And in this example, I'm going to include a video, an MP4 from a subdirectory, setting width and height and current position. Okay. And in addition, there's two here, so you'll see both of these videos here. And let me go ahead and preview that in Firefox. Okay. So again, you can see both of those. In addition to embedding content that way, you can also use the embed tag and place it within object tags. And that way you can set an ID and parameters, and this is useful for lots of other things like flash videos or real videos, or lots of other content that you might want to embed inside of a web page. So here's an example of just taking that embed tag for, in this case, an MP4 video, and placing that inside open and closing object tags. And this way we can actually specify parameters and things. This is a technique you'd use if you embed a YouTube video or real video, something like that. And basically with my MP4s it just looks the same. Here's just another quick way to do that. In this case, instead of using the embed tag or the embed tag with the object tag, you could generate an iframe and load a video into an iframe. And we'll go over that later when we're talking about frames and iframes. Here are HTML comment tags. Comment tags are used to add comments to an HTML document that will not be displayed or processed when viewing a web page, but are visible when viewing the HTML source of a web page. These comment tags are useful to developers and programmers because they can put notes in their code, but they won't be available or visible to the user when viewing the HTML document itself. For example, if I use the less than sign and then the exclamation point and a dash, and then a dash and the greater than symbol, any text I write inside of it is an HTML comment. And you'll see it in the HTML source, but you won't see it on the HTML page. Here are several examples. And here are some HTML comment tags as an example. And you can see by the way that NetBeans color codes it that this text here and this text will not actually display on the web page. It's here in the HTML source, but not on the web page. So if we were to view it, that won't show up. And to illustrate that point, all you see is HTML comment tags, link query, they capture Princess Zelda, but if I look at the source, here you can actually see the hidden comment tags that are only available in source view. Next we have the BR tag. The BR tag inserts a carriage return or line feed into an HTML document. Each time you add the BR tag to your HTML source, it causes text, images, and tables to drop down a line. For example, if we wrote line 1 and then the BR tag, line 2 and then the BR tag, and line 3, then line 1 and line 2 and line 3 would all be on separate lines. See here in this HTML source that lines 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 will all be on separate lines. However, you can see that lines 6 and 7 without BR tags will not. And to illustrate that, line 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 5, and then without any more BR tags, lines 6 and 7 are on the same line as line 5. The next item we'll look at is the HTML center tag. The center tag centers everything between its open and closing tags. For example, if I wrote the words center me in between the open and closing center tags, then they would be centered in the middle of the page. Here's an example of text in between open and closing center tags. So all of this text would be centered on the page. And to illustrate that, as you can see, this is inside of center tags, and this was outside of center tags. Next is the HTML image tag. Use the image tag to load and display images on a web page. Some of the image tag's attributes are source, which specifies the location URL of the image, alt, which specifies alternate text, and this shows up if the image doesn't, or it can also be used as a pop-up or mouse over in some browsers. Border specifies the width of the image border, so therefore 0 would be no border. Name, which sets the image name, often used with JavaScript and cascading style sheets. ID, which sets the image ID. Height and width. Use map, which specifies the location URL of an image map, which will map out certain areas of the image that you can click on as a hyperlink. And then the align attribute, which specifies the image alignment in relation to surrounding text. And examples would be bottom, top, middle, left, and right. In this example, we're using several image tags, and we're loading from a subdirectory called media_images, Zelda 1, 2, and 3 JPEG, link 1 and 2 JPEG, and together JPEG. Notice the width and the height have been set to the same, and we also have alt tags. So depending on the browser that you're using, if you were to hold the mouse over the image, this would be a mouse over or pop-up, which would say Skyward Sword. Or if for some reason people had images turned off and they were text-only browsing, then they would simply see Skyward Sword. In this example here, we're placing a border around the image by setting border equals 5. So let's see how that looks. Another cool thing you can do with image tags is to use the useMap attribute. And so in this second example, I have an image tag, and the source is loading this image together.jpg. And I've doubled the width and height to 400 by 400. Small border of 2, and it's going to have an alt tag, which if you look at it in Internet Explorer would pop up as a little pop-up text. Now, this attribute here, useMap, is actually loading the image map, okay? So a little pound symbol and Mad Zelda fan map. Well, here is Mad Zelda fan map, and it's, notice, an open and closing map tags. When you define an image map, you can do it in one of 3 ways. You can do it as a rectangle, in which case you simply supply 4 arguments, the starting x and starting y coordinates, and the ending x and ending y coordinates. You can do it as a circle, in which case you supply 2 arguments, the center coordinate and the radius size. Or you can do it as a polygon, in which case you're going to supply a series of x and y coordinate pairs, however many you need to complete and close the polygon. Well, in this image map, I'm just using rectangles. And I threw a circle and a polygon in here just so you could see an example of how the argument lists would go. Fed into the attribute COORDS, or chords for coordinates. But here's the one I use most frequently, which is rectangle. And you can see that start out at x, which moves this way, 0, and y, which moves down this way, 0. So that's the top left-hand corner of the image. And then go x 100, which is over this way where I'm moving the mouse cursor, and go down 100, y. Okay? And then here I just start where the previous image finished, and then I start again where the previous image finished. Now, just to show you how these message map tags behave for our image tag, I'm going to load this in Firefox. And if I load it in Firefox, the image is there, but the alt tags don't pop up. But you'll notice if you look down here where I'm moving the mouse and the screen, you'll notice how the URL changes. Let me get this stupid pop-up to disappear. All right, there we go. So you can see how the URL will change as I move the mouse across the x-axis. All right, that's Firefox. Now I'm going to load an Internet Explorer, and actually Internet Explorer will show the alt tags. So watch this. As I move it across the x-axis, it'll pop up and say Save Princess Zelda. And watch the URL down at the bottom there, f1_image tags HTML. Well, again, look at the alt tag, Save Princess Zelda. Okay, and then as I continue to move it, it'll change to help link. And then notice that the URL changes in the bottom left corner over here. All right, and then as I continue to move it, it'll say Rescue Midna. And again, notice help link was the alt tag and Rescue Midna was the alt tag. So there's the pop-up there, or the alternate text. And then finally, when I leave the image map area, it'll just show you the alt tag for the image tag, the original image tag, which was up here. Remember, this is the original image tag, and it just said True Love. All right, so let's test the hyperlink functionality of that. And again, href is in each of these 3 tags here inside of the map tags. So if we test that out, and I click here, notice it takes me to this page. Okay, I'm going to go back. Notice now there's like a little mask drawn around where the image map square was. So I'm going to move over here now and click the second part of the image map. Notice it takes me here. And now, notice again a little mask is drawn around there. And now I'm going to move over here and click on the third part of the image map. Okay. Next are HTML font tags. The font tag sets the font face, color, and size of the text being displayed in an HTML document. Here are some examples. In the first example, we're setting the face to be Comic Sans MS, the size to be 4, and the color to be red. Therefore, the words Hello Nurse will be displayed in that font, and that size, and that color. The next example, we're using a font face of Arial, a size of 2, and the color blue, and therefore Animaniacs in between the font tags would be displayed with those attributes. This is just an example of the same HTML document, in this case utilizing font tags to change or modify the font. So you can see here's my image tags, and those are the same JPEGs that we showed in the previous example. But here we're changing the font face to Brush Script Standard, the size to 6, the color to pink for the Princess Zelda. We're changing the font face to Bradley Hand ITC, size 6, color aqua for the hero Link, and then to Bank Gothic MDBT, size 5, color gold for Star-Crossed Lovers. So again, to see what that looks like in the web browser, we'll load it up in Firefox. And you can see here's what it looks like. The next item we'll cover are HTML hyperlinks. An ahref tag is used to create hyperlinks that take the user to another URL or location when the link is clicked. For example, if I put http://www.networkingprogramming.com in double quotes and place this inside of an ahref statement inside of an opening anchor tag, then add a closing anchor tag, and then between the open and closing anchor tags type the word netprog, when the user clicks the word netprog, they'll be taken to the website or URL www.networkingprogramming.com. In a second example, if I were to do the same and say take www.reignofgod, place it in double quotes within an ahref statement and an opening anchor tag, then add a closing anchor tag and add the words Reign of God in between the open and closing tags, when they click on Reign of God, they'll be taken to the URL or website www.reignofgod.com. Note, the text between the ahref and a tags is what the user actually sees on the web page. The URL in quotations after ahref equals is where the user is sent to when the link is clicked. So in other words, they won't actually see the code ahref or anything concerning the URL, just the word netprog or Reign of God. Okay, this brings us to the hyperlink tag, and it's a combination of an opening anchor tag and a closing anchor tag. You can see how NetBeans highlights the open and closing anchor tags there. And you use the attribute href, in this case to specify the URL of a website, networkingprogramming.com. Now all of this is invisible to the user, so they're not going to see that part on the web page. The only part they're going to see is this, this text right here, networking programming, and it'll be underlined. But the code behind the page tells it that when they click on it, the hyperlink is to take them to this URL, this location, this website. Okay, and that's the way hyperlinks work. So again, open and closing anchor tags, the href attribute, and here's an example of them, taking them to a website that's a completely different URL or different website. Here's an example of just taking them to a single web page that's on the same website. You could do either way. Here is an example here of using a hyperlink or creating a hyperlink that uses the target attribute as well as href. And what that does is, later when we cover frames, we'll talk about how to use target. But target new means to open it up in a brand new web page in a new window, sort of like when you right-click in Internet Explorer and you say open in new window, instead of opening the page in the same window. So that's the target attribute. But that'll just give you kind of 3 different examples there of how to create a hyperlink or use the ahref tag. Now again, we're just using the same basic HTML tags, HTML head, body that we've already talked about, font, embed for some music. So let's see how that looks. Alright, and so here, if I click on this tag here, it takes us to the URL networking programming. Okay, and if I click on this tag, it takes us to a local web page. You can see up here in the address bar. And then if I click on this tag, notice it opens up a new window. So it's a new tab. Here's the old page, and here's the new page that it loaded. Okay, so you can see three different uses of the hyperlink. Next, let's talk more specifically about HTML anchor tags. Now, we've used anchor tags to create a hyperlink with the href attribute. However, the aname anchor tag is somewhat like the hyperlink tag. The difference is that instead of taking the user to another URL location when clicked, anchor tags can take the user to a different place on the same web page designated by a name. To do this, first we would designate a section of the HTML document with an anchor name. So in other words, I'd have an opening anchor tag, the attribute name, and let's say that I specify the term mountain. Then I'd put text in between the open and closing anchor tags, in this example, mountain poem. Next, I create a hyperlink to the anchor that I just designated. To do this, I use another set of open and closing anchor tags, and this time I use the href attribute, and I would just specify mountain. And then I'd put some text in between it, say click here to read the mountain poem. Well, when the user clicks that, it will go and take them to the section of the HTML document that has been designated with the name mountain. You can also create a hyperlink to an anchor name located on a different page. To do this, just use the pound symbol. In other words, if I add an open and closing anchor tag in ahref, and I were to say poems.html, the pound symbol mountain, then it would go to another page, poems.html, and go down and find the designated name in an anchor tag of mountain when they click the link that said click here to read the mountain poem. Here's some HTML code that's similar to our previous examples. The same image tags, but if you'll notice down here, I'm going to go down towards the bottom of the document, I've added lots of BR tags, and that'll add lots of line feeds or carriage returns to go down the page. And then here I've created an anchor tag. It's not a hyperlink because it's not href, but it's just a name. It says Twilight Princess, so that's sort of the label. And then right here after that, I've embedded a video file in MP4, tp_midnastory MP4. Okay. Here's a bunch more BR tags, so that'll drop it down, quite a few more lines or carriage returns. Again, not a hyperlink href, but just an anchor tag with name and a label. And I've embedded another MP4, in this case skyward _ending MP4. Okay, so that here I've set up the anchor tags with the name. So to navigate, to jump to a spot on the same page, instead of going to another page like you would with a hyperlink in this case, all I have to do is use the href tag and then reference it with a pound symbol. So a pound symbol Twilight Princess, a pound symbol Skyward Sword, and in this case it's going to go reference this name here and this link and this anchor tag here and this name here and this anchor tag here. Okay. So just showing you how to use anchor tags to navigate on the same page, whereas in the previous example you saw how to use hyperlink, the href attribute and anchor tags to navigate to another page. So let's see how that works. We'll load it up in Firefox. Okay. And here's our page. And if you scroll down, there's two videos way down here. Alright, so they're towards the bottom of the page where they're playing. So I'm going to click the first one. Notice it takes me to this video on the same page. Still on the same page, I haven't changed pages, but look at the pound symbol there in the address bar. I'm going to go back. Now it takes me here to Skyward Sword. Again, notice the pound symbol in the address bar. And as you can see, these are on the same page. Now we have come to an HTML element known as the table. HTML table tags provide a powerful and versatile means of formatting, organizing, and presenting information within an HTML document. There are three sets of table tags. Open and closing table tags designate an HTML table. Open and closing TR tags designate a table row, and open and closing TD tags designate a row cell or column. Let's delve into HTML table tags a bit further and look at the attributes that go with each tag set. First, we'll look at attributes of the table tag. The open and closing table tags are simply table and a / in table. Some table tag attributes are border, which sets the border width of the table, BG color, which sets the table's background color, cell spacing, which sets the spacing between the table cells, cell padding, which sets spacing between the cell's border and its contents, width and height, and then align to set the table's horizontal alignment to left, center, or right. Here's an example of a table tag being used with some attributes. Here are attributes of the row tag. The open and closing row tags are tr and then /tr. Some row tag attributes are BG color, which sets the row's background color, width and height, align to set the row's horizontal alignment to left, center, or right, and v-align, which sets the vertical alignment of the table row. Possible values are top, middle, bottom, and baseline. Here's an example of a table row tag with attributes. Finally are attributes of the cell tag. The open and closing cell tags are TD and /TD. Some cell tag attributes are BG color, which sets the cell's background color, width and height, align, which sets the cell's horizontal alignment to left, center, or right, v-align, which sets the vertical alignment of the table cell. Possible values are top, middle, bottom, and baseline. No wrap, which turns the word wrapping on or off in the cell. Col span, which sets the number of columns the cell will span, and row span, which sets the number of rows the cell will span. Here's an example of a cell tag with attributes. Here is an example of a simple HTML table. So first we have our opening table tag. Notice down here is our closing table tag. So all the table code goes in between these tags. And again, as with any HTML tag, you want to be very careful that you sandwich everything between the open and closing tags. If you forget to close a tag, or you get things out of sequence, then you're going to have all kinds of problems with the web page displaying properly or being interpreted properly by the web browser. So let's look at the table tag here. In this case, it's going to have a border in this of width 2. It's going to have cell spacing 2, cell padding 2. It's going to be aligned towards the center. The background color will be purple, and the width will be 600. Okay. And then let's count the rows. And I've put comment tags in here so you can see, but there's one row, and there's another row. There's the third row. There's the fourth row. There's the fifth row. And here is the sixth row. I have a hard time saying that with the TH, but sixth row. Okay, so 6 rows, and you can see the code, and then let's go back and look at the cells. So the rows are nested inside the table tags. Well, just in the same way that the cell tags are nested inside the row tags. And so I've indented here so you can kind of see, how they work together or how they fit together. But in this case here is a single cell, one cell. And I've used the col span attribute to make it span 3 columns. And if I didn't do that, then when I wanted, here I'm trying to create a row where there's just one cell, but the text is centered, and then beneath it will be another row that has 3 cells. So if I didn't use col span 3, then it wouldn't look right. It would just put the text in, the equivalent of the width of one cell. So I have to use that here. But down here I don't have to use it because I'm adding 3 cells or 3 columns. Cell is sort of synonymous with column, say. In this case, first row is just one column, but it takes the width of 3 columns. Hence, cos span equals 3. The second row has 3 columns in it, all right, 3 cells. The third row, again, just has one cell, one column, but it's 3 wide. We're going to make that one column 3 columns wide, and that way it'll match up against row 4 and row 2, which do have 3 cells, or 3 columns. And then again, when I go down, here's my next cell inside of row 5, and once again, I'm spanning it out to be the width of 3 columns, even though it's only one column because there's only one set of cell tags, TD tags, in the row there. And then I'm doing the same thing here. So hopefully that will give you a good illustration of the usage of table tags and table row tags and cell tags, TD tags, and also of the usage of col span to cause a cell to even out or to span out for multiple columns so you can make it look right in a table. Well, that's the first table, then I add a line, and here's the second table. And then this is just sort of a simple table, but again, I'm setting a border 2, cell spacing and cell padding 2, and that's the width between the cells and between the text or the content that you put in the cells. aligning it to center. The background color is set to purple. The width is 600, so it's the same width as the previous one. But this one only has 2 rows. And you can see the first row is once again just one cell or one column, but it's going to span the width of 3 columns because I'm using the call span attribute there, and I'm going to center it. And the font tag, we're just modifying the font there. Then in the second row, notice I have 2 cells. Alright, so here's a cell and here's a cell. And I'm just basically splitting that second row in half. So let's see how that looks. We'll see how it looks real quick. And if I view the page, just create 2 very simple tables. And here's how they would look with everything displayed. Okay. Now let's take a look at another example real quick. Here in our second example, we're doing something very similar, but this time we're following the same pattern with the table tags and the table row tags and the table cell tags. But this time, instead of just plain text, we're going to use our image tags. We're going to put some JPEG files, some graphics. We're going to embed images, and we're also going to, in the second table, we're going to embed 2 MP4s, so our videos. And you can set border equals 0 and make a table invisible. And I'm setting it to 2 here so you can see the table, but a lot of web pages do that. Here in this example, the first table, I set the border to be 0. So you can't see the table, but still it gives you a great way to position and align things on a page. So you could create a table with lots of cells. You could make the border 0 and therefore make it invisible. But then that gives you really good control over where you position things like graphics and text, because you can put it into different cells, and it helps you line things up. So just to show you what that looks like, I'm going to display it here. Alright. And so, here's the first table, and there's 3 columns or 3 cells, and there's the first row there. Second row, in this case, I have 2 cell tags, or 2 sets of cell tags, 2 columns. Third, alright. And then the text, this is in, its own separate row as well. So I'll just count them. Alright, so this is row 1. This is row 2. This is row 3, the hero link. Row 4 would be the 2 images hero link. Row 5 would be the text star-crossed slivers, and row 6 would be this image here. Okay. And I'm going to go ahead and stop that MP3 for now. And then here's the second table. And in this case, we've embedded a couple of videos. And here's the first cell. And the second cell. And you can do this with YouTube videos, all kinds of things, whatever you wanted to, but